just try to meet as many people as you can. Ask people what they do, because that person might be in the tech industry that has a zero to do with you, but could sell that tech company and make $1 bazillion and then come back to you and be like, my wealth manager wants me to invest. Again, be curious, being meaningful conversations, and those lead to other opportunities, so on and so forth.
You're listening to Mic'd Up with RPM, an RPM Living podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the RPM podcast. I'm Tony Souza, the VP of Marketing Relations. We got a cool show for you today. I got some big guests. I'm excited to talk to them, learn about their experiences, learn their history, kind of what they're doing, what they're looking forward to in 2024. So let's just jump right into it. Quinn, Max, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well,
Pumped to be
pumped.
Excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you guys. I know who you guys are. I think a lot of people at RPM may know who you are, maybe outside of RPM as well. But maybe for those listening or watching who don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us what you do for RPM.
You want me to start? Okay.
ladies first.
So yeah, a little backstory. Born and raised in Northern California.
Yeah.
Started my career there, but graduated college with a wine and viticulture degree. So thought I was going to be selling wine my entire life, but learned quickly that I liked drinking wine more than I liked selling wine. So, I think all of us can probably relate to this. We fell into the industry somehow, some way, moved back home, was looking for jobs and started leasing apartments part-time. And that was in 2010 and never left. But then, career paths changed and moved to Nashville, lived in Nashville for a number of years, was on the operations side of the business up until that move, and then came over to kind of the business development client services world. And just have been with a couple different large third-party management companies, joined the RPM team earlier this summer, working with and under Max. And that's just kind of...
Congratulations on your recent
Thank you.
promotion,
Thank
title
you so
change.
much.
Executive Vice President
Thank
of
you.
Client Relations, right?
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah,
Well,
it's been jumped right in, but
That's how it goes.
it's been a wild ride, but
Yeah.
it's been fun.
Good
So
deal.
Well, super pumped that you're on the team.
thank you.
Max Reinbach, President of Client Services, as y'all know at least. My background is, I want to say similar to others, but I grew up on a farm in East Texas and went to University of Texas here in Austin, and fortunately never left. So I've been here now for 20 years and been working since 2007, and reflecting on just my career in itself, I've only touched really apartments. Had a private equity job right out of college. Of course, didn't know what I was doing, but sat in a cube and learned from those that were smarter than me. Was a victim of the 2008 downturn as well, as most people might have been if they were in the industry. Moved along, worked at a broker, Apartment Realty Advisors, which is now Newmark, and then got a jump over to a large national management company and figured out that I was better not working in Excel, if you will, and speaking to people.
Yeah.
And about 7 years ago, at the end of this month, I jumped over and joined Jason Berkowitz and Angelique Goodenough at the time at Roscoe Properties, Inc., which is now known as RPM Living.
Man, that's cool. Well, you guys have both been very successful in your careers. I don't have to tell you that. You're both very humble about that as well. But there's a lot of people, I think, both inside RPM, outside RPM, that are really curious. I get a lot of questions as well. How do you grow a career? And I'll ask you that question. And it's different for everybody. Obviously, different experiences, different families, different backgrounds. But if there's anyone listening, inside RPM, outside RPM, I mean, tell us, obviously we've heard a little bit about your story, but I think there's some things in there that you've probably learned along the way that you're continuing to, let's say, double down on even as you go through and grow in your career today, because I'm sure you're not done growing. So I'd love to get, any feedback that maybe you have or thoughtfulness about someone trying to grow their career.
You want to start? You want me?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this a lot to young people that might call or want to connect about, who's hiring, whatever, and shake every hand you can.
Yeah.
At all times, don't make a fool of yourself, and I'm a victim of that often probably, but meaningful conversations, going back to that just root interpersonal communication theme, if you will. I mean, shake hands, remember faces. Sometimes it's hard to remember names immediately. If you have a business card, give it out. I know that that's not super common these days, but just try to meet as many people as you can, and not to fault where you're like, do you want to get a cup of coffee? Do you want to get a, it's just when you're out and about. Because look, I like to separate work and life. Now, oftentimes those,
Merge.
as you grow in your career and have, a higher position, if you will, I mean, it's kind of molds together. But, ask people what they do, because that person might be in the tech industry that has a zero to do with you,
Yeah.
but could sell that tech company and make $1 bazillion and then come back to you and be like, oh, I remember you're an apartment guy.
Right.
And what does that mean?
I bought all these apartment.
Or
communities
I have all this money and my wealth manager wants me to invest. Whatever. I mean, who knows, right? But again, be curious. You never know. Like literally, I was at a previous job and my phone rang, and it was Jason and Angelique. I mean,
Right.
they asked somebody about me and got my phone number, and so you just I'm victim of answering every spam call that rings on my phone too, because that could be the next deal, right?
Yeah.
So again, growing your career, it's I tell our analysts all the time, it's like you have to earn your stripes. Like this is a fact of life. I mean, I sat in a cube for 3 years, 5 years, whatever it was, not waiting on the next thing to happen, but doing my job and hopefully doing it well. Maybe not always the smartest guy in the room, but just trying to do it well and being meaningful with conversations, and those lead to other opportunities, so on and so forth.
Well, speaking, to that leading to other opportunities, I think a lot of people from the outside thought, well, Max is president of client services. That was always his goal, to be president of client services. If I was to guess, you probably had no idea of a title or really what you would do 15 years later.
No, I mean, gosh, I fell into the industry. I mean,
Right.
I got a job in private equity that was buying apartments and land to build apartments. And I got a job at a brokerage shop, and then I got a job, at another management company. And that's what I really say when I figured out that, like, punching the keyboard in Excel, that's a fact of, the business, right? You need to underwrite, you need to understand what a cap rate is, you understand what, cash flows analysis means, et cetera, blah, 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 blah. But I figured out that if I could take someone to lunch and be paid for it, and in theory eat for free, right? Business development was one of those things, because I like, to be out and
eat for free.
Yeah, of course. 227 today. But I mean, gosh, when we were discussing the promotion of Quinn and having someone take over the team, Chad had, Bogart had to be like, well, what should your title be? And I said, I'm not a title guy. I tell people all the time, you call me Captain BS if you want.
Well, I was going to say, I've gotten to know you pretty well. I can only assume probably even this title makes you a little uncomfortable, just because, it's a big title, and I don't know if you've always seen yourself that way. Obviously, you're a big personality, but I don't think I've ever got the sense that you care about the titles. And that sort of
I really don't, and a lot of people might. To me, it's just another day.
Sure.
Right. And freeing up some of my time to go have meaningful conversations where our customers are. I've found that that's more meaningful to go to Chicago or go to LA and take them to their favorite restaurant, because they want to show you what they do and what they like, and not wait on them to come to town. Because in Austin, at least, Birmingham for sure, we don't have customers that are, a lot of customers that are coming into town all the time. I think Dallas is more dynamic, maybe Houston as well, and then other larger cities where people are flying in and out. So, like, I need to be going to visit our customers, which I will be doing in 2024 more often. But yeah, I mean, title. It's I didn't think it was necessary per se, but Will it help?
Sure.
Maybe. Right.
Yeah. Talking, obviously, we've talked about RPM. Let's talk a little bit about RPM. What makes RPM different? And I'm going to start with you, Quinn, a little bit because I think you have a fresh perspective. Not that you don't, Max,
Yeah.
but you've been around for some time.
The
Quinn,
bias is heavy here.
what do you think makes RPM different?
Yeah, so, I wasn't really necessarily looking for the next opportunity. So I've worked for, our some of our large competitors. So I've worked under, national organizations that have been all great. But really the buzz on, I think LinkedIn and social media and seeing how RPM grew fascinated me. I also loved after initial conversations with, of course, Max and Jason is we're a national organization. So we've got over 200,000 units that we manage today. However, I think a lot of people in our industry say, oh, we run very boutique style. And candidly speaking, I have not seen that except when I came over to RPM. And a big thing and reason why I came over and what I appreciate so much is because we hold true to that statement. We're a large organization, yes, and we've got all of the backing and the support departments and the team members to help us grow that way. However, when it comes down to it, we really do operate very boutique style in the way where if I've got a client calling me with an issue that, he or she needs to get it resolved, I can pick up the phone, I can make that decision and or call Max or Jason. They will answer immediately and it's like, okay, what's the issue? Let's solve it. Whereas I think on the flip side, some of our competitors, there's roadblocks and there's avenues that you have to go up and down and kind of get through that approval process, which is frustrating from a client's perspective.
Sure.
And ultimately, so that was a huge plus for me of joining. And then also just our people and our culture. I mean, you've got to, obviously this is a job and we've got to wake up every day and, put our best foot forward, but you have to like what you do and like who you do it with.
Right.
And I really do say we've got a really strong team, not only on the client services business development team, but everyone that we talk to and interact with on a daily basis. And I think, first and foremost, if you don't have that culture, nothing works. And I really do think that we at RPM have that for sure.
Quinn, tell us a little bit about client services, business development. What is it? What is the day job? What is for those who may be...
Oh, it changes literally daily.
So by every second.
Yeah.
Maybe a day in the life,
Yeah. So our goal obviously is to grow the business, right? So bring new clients to RPM. However, we wear a lot of hats and we are, I think, a big support system to our operators. So day in the life, we get we connect with a client, they've got a deal that they want us to look at, and we will connect with the local operations team and our analyst team. I joke and say our analyst team's really the brain power and the machine behind all of the numbers, right? We don't give them enough credit. Yeah. So, we look at deals, whether or not it's in a, underwriting stage or if it's going to be a formalized RFP and pitch. We're kind of like the quarterback of what keeps that whole process all together. What's super important, I think, for us in the client services seats is the more you reach out to those operators in those markets and support them, I think the more successful it's going to be from start to finish. But, first priority, obviously, in our seat is going out and meeting clients, having that face-to-face interaction, and then really just guiding the process of what that looks like from the client's perspective and that deliverable. But again, I think we wear a lot of hats, we see a lot of people, we talk to a lot of people, and it's just making sure that whole process is streamlined. And at the end of the day, whatever that deliverable may be, we're packaging it up in a pretty bow and sending it off to
what I liked what you said about that, a lot of things that I liked, but you mentioned operators a couple times. And as I almost call myself a former operator, but once an operator, always an operator ultimately.
Right.
Max, I'd love to get your take on some things that Quinn said and how vital that relationship is between operator and your team, because I think you've said it. I know, Quinn, you know this to be true. operations is key to growing business as well. And I think some operators don't
1,000%.
realize that continuing to serve a client, investor, owner in a very positive way can organically also grow business that way too.
Yeah, I mean, I say this, and it's very true. Business development might get the deal, operations keeps it.
Mm.
And that's through performance, whether it's market driven, people driven, whatever it is. It's not always perfect. No one is. But operations, and you know it, and you were a part of it a lot, is you have a full-time job as an operator. And then Max is in your ear saying, hey, do you mind?
Yeah.
Or our analyst team is, do you mind? We have to pitch business weekly, and we do. And sometimes it's multiple times a week.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening across all of our markets. Sometimes in a certain market, there's 2 pitches.
Mm-hmm.
That takes away from, their day job, right? So the regional manager might not be super involved until, a week or so before the pitch or getting it prepared for it. So they're not pulling away from their current customers. But it takes a lot of grace. And our operators listening might not think I have a lot of grace sometimes, but, understanding that we're all a team.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what it is. If we are responsible for growing or bringing on new opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
operations, needs to be the one that buys into it, speaks about it, because I could pitch a deal all day long,
Right.
but I'm not going to lease the apartment. I'm not going to fix the AC. I'm not, you have to listen, and the client wants to hear from the operations team.
Of course.
Well, and I say all the time, yes, obviously our relationships with clients are important, but I think our relationships with our operations team are just as, if not more important.
Yeah.
And so, I guide my team of, hey, look, if you're not on a plane, if you're not, at lunch, dinner, meeting with a client, get on those pro forma review calls. You might not have, much information to share or contribute to that call, but at the end of the day, you're running that market, and it just twofold. You are showing support for the operations team that have to, spend time out of their day to get on that call. And also you learn a little bit about that market as well. And so I think that's super important is, we understand and respect that operators are going a million miles per minute too. So just making sure that we're there and we're showing our support for our team.
I think that's a tremendous recommendation for your team to jump on those calls, to just kind of talk through the nuances of the market,
Right.
changing fees, all
Yeah.
sorts of things
Yeah.
that are happening. And as operators, we well know, and you guys know, obviously more closely connected to the markets that you are, that those things are happening. Let's talk a little bit about clients. Let's talk a little bit about how they've changed post-pandemic, because I think there's some focuses. Obviously, as we come, here in 24, we may now be in ultimately. Talk to me a little bit about post-pandemic changes in some of the clients' focuses, whether it be staffing, people. Obviously, as we go forward in 24, technology.
Yeah.
Looking to sort of centralize things, obviously insurance rates and
Yeah.
mortgage, payments and debt services are all going up. So
Yeah, so I'll start, and then you can chime in. I guess from our perspective, obviously post-pandemic, I think clients are drilling down into the basics, right? So they're looking at occupancy, they're looking at those financials because of, the world that we're in and the state of the economy. I think obviously less transactions and acquisitions that are going on across the country and more management changes. So it's like they have the time to drill down into the details. And really that's what they're looking for. I think always people first. So we want to make sure that we have a strong team on site. But whereas I think in the past life, clients may not have been as focused on that because there were so many other things going on in their worlds where they're looking at it. They're looking at the monthly reports on a monthly basis and drilling down into every single variance comment.
Right.
And so I think the shift has been not necessarily, obviously the operations team are always looking at, how to make the teams better, the properties better, how to drive NOI, but they're constantly looking at that and more focused on, okay, is there a competitor in this market that's better?
Sure.
Yeah, I remember sitting in the office when the world shut down. I think to me the date was March 13th of 2020. And me, Jason, Josh, everyone kind of was sent home to work from home because it was super uncertain. But I live close to the office, and so I was going to the office every day. I had a young child, and I think my wife appreciated me being gone. And we just buckled down and said, okay, let's just make sure. The first was rent collection, right? That's what was the biggest focus, was rent collection. Fortunately, at the time, and now better, is our online payments were robust. But then it was, okay, well, how do we handle non-payers? What do we do? Cash for keys, whatever it might be, evictions, moratoriums. I mean, this was different across the country. But what was super interesting is that gave us a really good time to reconnect with all of our local brokers, because they wanted to know our data to then go tell the folks that own properties or that were curious about the market, what's happening, what stats, is there rent growth, or there non-payers, what's the percentage of non-payers, what are people holding out, whatever it might be. So that was a silver lining to what ultimately was the COVID situation. But what was super interesting to me is fast forward to July of 2020 and the 24 months thereafter. That 2-year period was an absolute gangbuster acquisition market.
Game changer.
Yeah.
I mean, it might not be seen again, right? Cap rates were as low as they've ever been. Pricing, of course, in relation to the cap rate was the highest it's ever been. Rent growth was out of the wazoo. People were moving to Austin, for example. Take Austin, we're here.
Sure.
From both coasts because of shutdowns. I mean, it was very exciting. But also, the turn of that was, I remember looking at data, because we look at a 90-day forecast. We might have had 20,000 units coming in from acquisition and 18 going out for disposition, right? So we had to almost have the mindset of let's get 4 or 5 to 1 we lose to have some meaningful growth. I mean, so we were gaining, call it 2,000 units a quarter, which is incredible to think. I mean, incredible meaning like it's not that much of all the work we were doing to onboard and offboard, right? So fortunately, we have all those teams that handle that.
Which we got a pod coming up, talk to the transitions, which is huge.
That's the
thankless sometimes to
Absolutely.
and lifeblood, honestly, behind what we do.
Right.
Besides our analysts, go court. But
Nice plot.
right.
Yeah.
Well, but people were buying pre-stabilized deals, right? And which is kind of disheartening. As a management company, you're an operator, you're working a lot, you're helping the brand, you're setting up, you're doing all the pitches, you're doing all the prep, and then you get to 15% lease, 20% lease, whatever it might have been, and then bingo, see you later, the deal's gone, and an owner-manager comes in and buys it, right? Now, fast forward to 2024 almost, we're in a state of uncertainty, right? There's a lot of groups that are losing deals due to default on their loans because they took stake in the floating interest rates, which weren't floating up, right? Outside forces, of course, have caused the economic or our economy situation today. But now we're kind of looking at folks and going, okay, well, what's going to happen with this deal? Or, hey, will you look at this? I'm unhappy with my management now. And, management changes, I think, are tougher than acquisitions, right?
Oh,
There's a lot of skeletons, if you will, or there's a lot of unknowns. You lose historical knowledge versus on an acquisition, you've got a business plan, you're going to implement that. That's how you're going to drive your return.
Startup.
And, taking over a deal might have disgruntled residents because of parking situations or theft or security or whatever it could be is taxing on our team too. But, that's the world we live in today. And I'm not an economist. Hopefully Brad will get on your pod soon. And I'm an optimist to a fault, but mainly kind of a pessimist. Mainly just because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? And if interest rates come down, you'll see more volume in transaction, right? Which is good for the economy. It's good for our business. It's good for our people, so on and so forth down the line. But ultimately, I mean, again, as a third-party management company, as an arm's length vendor to our customers, we're fighting the fight just with them, right? We're trying to be helpful on our side to underwrite, to show how we would operate versus the next best management company or a new whatever it could be. Developers are still building,
Right.
right? Press on, go forth, right?
I mean, I talked to a few developers as well, and I think they're excited about the downturn in some sort of exciting, weird way that it's opportunity.
Right.
And that's really kind of, I think, where my question is next. I know, we talked about not being an economist. We'll have Brad to talk to about that, but I'm curious to get both of your takes as we kind of pivot to the future a little bit about opportunity. Where is the silver lining for RPM as we go forward? And maybe we've touched on it, management change opportunities. I'm sure many large fee management groups are thinking the same way.
Of course.
But where do you think, from your perspective, from where you sit, where there's opportunity for the next 12, maybe 24 months?
Gosh, well, we just had our client services meeting here in town last week. So in 2024, we've got pretty aggressive but exciting growth goals in 2024. I think, first and foremost, it goes down to our operations and who's in those markets, right? So we are committed to, and I think obviously Jason and the team as hiring top talent. Going back to Max's point, is we can maybe win the business, but at the end of the day, the operators have to keep the business. It's really exciting to see, our goals and desires of going into markets that we're not currently in today. And I think that the strategy we have behind that, we've seen it be successful in California today. Again, I think putting the right people in those markets, and then the growth will come. But yeah, I think, I was just talking to my team today, is we're getting a lot of calls and buzz from the growth that we've seen in 2023, which is great. And then just getting on these calls with the clients and having these discovery and scoping calls of, okay, what is their investment and business strategy? What does that look like? Does that align with us today? Where does this, asset sit today? Where do you see, your capital plan go to? So I think it's just more healthy conversations we're having with our clients and kind of seeing what their goals are and if we can align with them.
Yeah, and the way we look at our growth, and we've got incredibly smart people at the corporate office that mine the data, right? We could tell you how many units there are in the U.S., how many are owner-managed, self-managed, third-party managed, and what markets where we think we can have penetration. We're not going to say, Atlanta, we need 50% penetration in the market. No. I mean, in some markets, top management companies have 2 or 3% penetration. And we don't want to follow suit, but we're also realistic as to we should, if you're just looking at math, by math, we should be able to get X amount of market share. Austin, there's 400,000 units or something today, and we've got 30 of them, 30,000, right? Do the math. It's a low percentage. So, where we have an office today or where we want to plant a flag is what we're thinking about. And who owns there? Do we work for them today? Do we know someone in a past life that's at a company there today? Who are they? What is it? And the business has to make sense, of course, right? I mean, we take on a lot of projects that are profitable, some that are close to profitability, whatever, but you have to have a mindset when you have scale in a market on what you need to take and what not to take. And in new markets, you might go on and take something that will help you jump off, right? I mean, we've seen that in some portfolios we've taken over to help us bolster a market, right? Las Vegas is a wonderful opportunity or example of that. But, really, after speaking with Quinn and going through our business planning for 2024, our goal is to, of course, go into a burgeoning market such as, Southern California. Can we grow that into a measurable amount? We don't need 50,000 units, but can we get to 5 or 10? Right. You can see the steps, not it's, out of reach. Atlanta, for example, we need to be at X, and we should be able to get there by X, Y, and Z. So, I will selfishly say, or not selfishly, but I'm damning myself, I guess, is I've taken a shotgun approach for many years, trying to find business where we can. And we're really going to be laser focused in 2024 on our growth. Yeah,
it sounds like it's very strategic, not only in the markets and the market share that we want to focus on, but also the pieces and the people, right, that are in places in these markets. Appreciate you guys being as honest, frankly, and as vulnerable as you guys have been today. And I think it's going to translate quite well to a listening audience or a watching audience, that they're going to really appreciate that they could be someone like you, because you guys seem so human and there's opportunity for them to grow. So thanks for joining us
This
today.
was great.
And for those listening and watching, thanks for joining the RPM podcast. Again, I'm Tony Souza, the VP of Marketing Relations. Make sure to tune in next time to the RPM podcast.
Thanks for listening to Mic'd Up with RPM. Be sure to follow and subscribe to be notified of our future episodes.